Hello and welcome everyone. My name is Desi, and I wanted to talk about a mod for one of my most played and favorite Civil War era games, Ultimate General Civil War, and this is the JMP mod. I have probably put about 10 hours into it thus far, and I had some thoughts. First, I want to talk about the base game. The base game is obviously very good. I've played it extensively. However, I have some issues with it. I've beat it on Legendary for both the North and the South. The South is by far the more challenging campaign, although for the North it is more challenging early on. However, it is really cheesy. Up until like the last few battles, you just surround the enemy in a corner, shoot them to pieces, and then force them to surrender. It's quite redundant, and once you get the learning curve figured out, it becomes quite trivial. So after my last campaign of finishing for the South and establishing a big army and winning at Washington, which was extremely challenging, I decided I would play the Union campaign, and for an additional challenge, I would try this new mod that I had heard so much about and has been recommended to me. My first impression was pretty good. The first battle was actually quite a bit easier than it was on the vanilla campaign, and I was like, okay. And I liked the way it functioned. It felt better. It was a little bit slower paced. It felt like more of a Civil War grind. And unfortunately, I thought I was playing on Legendary at first, and I was playing on Major General, and it was quite easy. It was enjoyable. And then I played it on Legendary. It was still, the first mission was still easier, but I noticed something that was a little bit different, a little bit concerning, is that the enemy units would just charge. And I've dealt with this in vanilla, where the enemy has charged and you repulse them as long as you have a reasonable defense. As long as you're outnumbered, you have like a brigade and some skirmishers or some artillery, you can throw back a charge. And even if you get in a charge, you can still hold out for a while for reinforcements to come and relieve you. Now in J&P on Legendary, that is not the case. The enemy charges, and 99% of the time, if it's one on one, you just get wrecked. They will absolutely kill your unit and shove it off to the corner. You have to have at least 3 brigades to stop one charging brigade. And I've been told that there are ways to counter this, but I really I really don't feel like charge should be overpowered. I feel like that is the main weakness in the legendary version. I've heard, well, if you tune it down to Major General, they won't do it as much. But in my opinion, like, this is a Civil War game. This is a game with muskets, rifled cannons, and small arms that are evolving. Like, this is not a melee simulator. This is not Medieval 2 Total War. This is a horse, musket, and rifle style of game. This is post Napoleonic. There wasn't a whole lot of charges in the Civil War. Yes, there are ones like Pickett's Charge and others, and charging did work, but usually it was a mass scale sort of thing where an enemy was vulnerable or whatever. It wasn't something that happened every 2 seconds like it does in this mod, and I think that's a flaw. And then I hear, well, Desi, scale it and put it down on Major General. It won't be that difficult. Well, no, I want to beat this game on Legendary. And the fact of the matter is, I can. And I'm sure I could figure out a way. But I've heard in order to beat it on Legendary, you have to do all this cheese, like go behind, steal victory points, and you have to get like melee cavalry of a certain size to stop charges. You have to do all these workarounds to stop a fundamental flaw with the system, which is that charge is overpowered. This is overtuned. I'm going to make a reference to Season of Discovery in World of Warcraft, the current raid that just came out, Sunken Temple. Sunken Temple is overtuned. It's not that the mechanics are hard, it's the fact that the bosses have too much health and deal too much damage. And it's the same with this. I really enjoy the weapon systems and the upgrades. Like you can see on the screen with the artillery, you can see where canister, shell, and solid shot are. Like that is such a huge improvement, and I absolutely love it. And like with muskets, It feels so much better. But what I liked about the original game is that you could use cover to basically establish a defensive position and advance or whatever. But in this game, cover is useless because the enemy just charges. And unless you have the sufficient artillery, infantry, or this huge clump of troops to repulse it, you will just get routed. And oftentimes, if a unit's big enough, it will just instantly force you to surrender or shatter your units. And so I find myself not really enjoying the game so much and just panicking and waiting for the enemy troops to charge because if I don't repel those charges, my entire army gets routed. On the other hand, I do like the condition system where if your troops get tired, they don't fight as efficiently. So you have to kind of cycle them in and out. And on the first part of Bull Run, I actually had a really good experience, but I had an open map and everything else like that. And I played it absolutely perfectly. And you can watch it. I have it on my channel, but as soon as I got to capturing the victory point, the enemy reinforcements came, and there was literally, despite how well I had played and how well I had saved my army for the final encounter, there was literally no way I could stop the reinforcements because all they did is they'd march up and charge. There wasn't any strategy or anything. They just brought up bulk troops and charged. I simply didn't have enough time, and even though I'd preserved my army so well and took so few casualties, I had like a 6-to-1 kill death ratio. I had several brigades surrender. I literally couldn't play it any better. And despite all that, there's no way for me to win the battle because the reinforcements just come in and charge. So overall, I would say that if you're playing like on Major General or whatever, this is a very good mod and it is a vast improvement to the system, but I'm not here to play on Major General. I'm here to beat the game on its hardest difficulty. And the only way I can do that is cheese. The only way I can do that is create this special type of cavalry to get behind and flank and stop charges and do all this unrealistic, immersive breaking crap just to stop one mechanic, one overpowered mechanic. And like the enemy skirmishers break off, and I've heard, well, the enemy skirmishers are overpowered, so just go into the game file and tweak it. Like, this is something that shouldn't be a thing. Like, skirmishers are overpowered and charge is overpowered. That needs to be changed. It's fundamentally flawed that charge is overpowered. And this isn't a get good situation. This is a Desi, you need to do all this cheese to get this to work properly. And I'm not a fan of that, so at this point, I would recommend this mod for people who want to play on Major General or Brigadier General or whatever, because there's so many vast improvements and so much quality of life. But Legendary, if you want to have a good time, it's unplayable. You're beating a head against the wall because all you're doing, you're not using cover, and that's why skirmishers are so overpowered, by the way, because you can't use cover. If you try to get in cover and cluster your troops like you do in vanilla, the enemy will just charge you. And you can't hold. So you're sitting out in the open because all you're doing is waiting for them to charge. That's literally the entire strategy, is wait for the enemy troops to charge and run away and try to counter the charge. And then, of course, your troops get exhausted from all the running around to counter charges. That's literally the only strategies to counter charges in Legendary. And so I cannot recommend Legendary difficulty. Is it a challenge? Absolutely. But the challenge is avoiding charges, and that's it. That's the only mechanic. It's overtuned. So I guess that's all I have to say thus far. So I don't want to knock the people who spent all this time on this mod because it is a good mod and there are so many improvements, but it also has problems and it needs to be updated or fixed. I don't know if I need to go into the game files or whatever, but at this point, if I'm going to play on Legendary, I'm just going to play Vanilla. Because even though Vanilla is full of cheese, I can use cover, I can upgrade my weapons, and I know how the game works now. And I think at this point, I don't think it'll be more in, um, I'm not really looking forward, I'm not sure what I'm going to do at this point. If I'm just going to play vanilla or reduce difficulty, but I don't want to reduce difficulty. I want to show people how to beat vanilla on Legendary. And what I wanted to do is to show people that I could beat Legendary on this mod, but I don't feel like countering charges and it's not fun for me. And I don't get paid. This is a labor of love. So I don't really feel like spending hours and hours of theory crafting how to counter one mechanic. So anyways, I think that's all I have to say on this particular mod. Again, PandaKraut and the people who made this mod, great job. But Legendary is just not good. It's not doing it for me. It's a charge resist simulator. So, anyways, thank you all for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Peace.